The Black Voters Matter is committing $300,000 to the Divine Nine's Get Out the Vote initiative. The funding will target these 11 key states with a significant Black population to mobilize voters through direct contact, texting, and phone banking, and focusing on neighborhoods with high concentrations of Black voters. Cliff Albright, the co-founder of Black Voters Matter, is joining us now from North Carolina. Hey, Cliff, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. How you doing?
All right. Well, look, it's good to have you back. This is something fantastic. You know, as a member one of the Divine Nine, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, I think this is something that's excellent. Black Voters Matter is committing $300,000 to the D9 Get Out the Vote effort. So, can you give us more information about this, and how did you all go about selecting the 11 states?
Yeah, so this is a partnership that we've really been doing to different degrees ever since 2018, where we partnered with Divine Nine here in Georgia. Well, I'm actually in North Carolina right now, but in our home state of Georgia. And in 2020, we expanded it to make it even bigger and had more resources available. And so this has been something that we've really been doing for about 6 years. And pretty much in terms of the states that we selected, those are all states that, they're a part of the overall We Fight Back campaign that we're doing, where we're targeting like 12 states. Most of those are battlegrounds, but not just battlegrounds in the usual sense that people talk about, in terms of the presidential. They're also battlegrounds in terms of Senate races. And even in the case of Alabama, in terms of the new congressional seat, the majority
Yes.
Black, or at least Black opportunity congressional seat there. So these are all states where we know that Black voters are going to play key roles in making decisions, and we believe that's important that we have some of the oldest institutions in our community involved in that process. They're already involved, they're already doing stuff, but we're just trying to seed a little something into them to make it easier for them to do text banking or phone banking or doing sign waving or door knocking or whatever it is that they're doing.
Absolutely. Well, I see you coming to Michigan, so are you coming to Detroit?
Oh yeah.
Are you coming to Detroit? Oh, okay. You have to. Okay. Oh, so we're gonna have to connect because I live in Detroit. Okay. So Roland just played the interview he did with Quentin Folks earlier, a deputy campaign manager for Harris Walls, and I know you all are nonpartisan, but I wanted to understand. Explain how you all communicate policy when you are having these engagements, like especially these face-to-face engagements with people, and people saying, well, I voted in 2020, but we didn't get the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We didn't get the Voting Rights Act. I don't know if I'm going to vote today, okay? Because I hear things like that. How do you communicate policy and what is at stake for them to understand they need to vote in 2024?
Yeah, and just as a side note, just to be clear, we are largely nonpartisan, but we do have C3, C4, and we have a separate PAC entity. So today,
Okay.
I'm speaking mainly in terms of our C3, C4 work. But when we need to go hard in the paint, we can do that too. But yeah,
Okay.
We actually
All right.
just earlier today had one of those conversations that you talked about with sister that she voted in 2016 and was disillusioned, and and now she's like, I'm not seeing all the stuff that I want to see get done. And so we had that conversation a lot. And one of the things I said to her just literally today, no more than an hour or so ago, was, look, when we vote and we win some stuff and we get some power, guess what? We get some stuff done, right? And so we've been able to get some stuff done. We've been able to get student debt cancellation. We've been able to get infrastructure investment. We've been able to get a gun law, which wasn't the best or greatest gun law, but it's the first one in decades, and that means something to our communities, right? We get some stuff, but if we want to get more stuff, guess what we need? We need more power. And if we want more power, that means we got to come out and we got to, win more seats, right? We got to get a real majority in the Senate and not a fake majority, because you got two somewhat whatever non-team members in there. But we got to get more power, and we got to make sure that we're getting as much as we can. We got to even push them after Election Day to make sure that we're getting all the things that we want. But there's only one way that we're guaranteed either not get anything that we want. And that's if we're not
Right.
involved in the process. And so we have that conversation all the time. And the key is by really centering what it is that that person is most concerned with and showing them the
Yes.
connections in terms of like how things have gotten done or have not gotten done and what changes we have the power to make.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I think is important to explain to people is how to remove obstructionists. Why did we not get this? Why was President Biden's executive order on student loan forgiveness that would have helped 40 million people and lifted 500,000 African American families from a negative net worth to a positive net worth? Why was that overturned by the Supreme Court? That's because of the 2016 election, and Donald Trump won by 78,000 votes, right? And he got 3 Supreme Court justices, and it was a 6-3 decision. Okay, so I think it's also important to understand why something didn't happen and how to remove the obstructionists. It's always not about what somebody can do for you. It's also understanding how to stop and block what people are trying to do to you. So we have to vote also not just for a candidate, but against other agendas. Go ahead, Cliff.
Right. You know, you're exactly right. And we say it all the time that, look, this is not a popularity contest, and this is not a referendum on whether this person is like everything you want them to be or achieve everything that you want them to achieve, but it's a choice. And it's a choice between the people that are actually trying to get something done for you and the people that are literally running on anti-blackness, right? And so, and you give me that choice, and that's really not a choice at all.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to go to my panel and see if they have any questions. We're going to start with Kelly first. Kelly, you have any questions for Cliff?
Hi, Cliff. I guess my question is, as far as what Black Vote, are you going to be on the campaign trail with the Harris campaign at these HBCUs? What is the format? And are you able to list out which HBCUs they're going to be visiting?
I can't list out which ones they're going to be visiting because we're not traveling with them. We can't travel with them and coordinate with them. You know, like I said, we wear many hats, and one of our hats we'll actually be doing actual independent expenditures in support of the Harris campaign. So we can't coordinate with them in terms of like traveling with them on campuses, but there's a lot of overlap. You know, like you know, they've been to the AUC, the Atlanta University Center, Morehouse, Spelman, Clark. We do a lot of stuff there. You know, today we're in North Carolina. In fact, we were at Shaw yesterday, and some of the students said that, you know, that the campaign is going to be coming there in a couple of weeks. And I think maybe even had already visited there a couple of weeks ago, or even just a couple of days ago. And so there's obviously going to be a lot of overlaps, especially in some of those critical states, you know, so like in Georgia, in North Carolina, in Pennsylvania. I'm sure that we've been to Lincoln several times, and I'm sure her campaign will be at Lincoln. And so so there's overlap, but we can't like travel with them and coordinate with them like that.
All right, thanks, Kelly. Matt, did you have a question for Cliff?
Yeah, I do. And first, let me thank you, Cliff, for the necessary work you do, brother, and for coming on and keeping us informed always. I guess my question to you is, what do y'all expect the impact to be in terms of with this $300,000 donation? I mean, I'm sure you have, but what do y'all think that's going to turn into in terms of how many people you interface with? What's your projected hopeful number of votes? What are y'all seeing in metrics in terms of that?
Yeah, I mean, we know that in those states that we've targeted, you know, if we're involving, and we're not necessarily doing all the Divine Nine in each of those states because, you know, that 300,000 can only go but so far. But, you know, if we get chapters and get like 100, say we get 100 chapter members involved in one of those states, you know, we think for every one of those members that's involved, that easily they can. We were just at an event just tonight at Livingstone in North Carolina, and we had students doing texting there. Some of them were Divine Nine members on campus, and we had students who in the span of an hour who texted 12,000 people, right? And so you get a 100 or so Divine Nine members who are each doing that, and you know that adds up. You know, you talk about 1.2 a million voters that you could potentially reach. And so, we think that in each of those states that this partnership is going to allow us to touch in one way or another, around a million voters, whether that be by text, whether that be by the visibility things that they'll be doing at polling places, whether that be through social media outreach that some of them will be involved in. We think that in each of these states that this partnership has the ability to touch a million people. So that was 12 states that we had on there. So, you could easily see us reaching 12 million people.
All right, excellent. I'm excited about this. Let me ask you a question, Cliff. More and more people are learning about Project 2025. Now, I was on I was speaking at a virtual town hall last Sunday for the National Association of Black Counselors, dealing with the impact that Project 2025 will have on the Department of Education, because they want to dismantle the Department of Education. What type of conversations are you having on the ground with African Americans as part of this initiative, this D9 initiative, when it comes to Project 2025?
Yeah, I mean, we're having conversations around Project 2025 in education, as you've said, the threats from not even just K-12, but even, at the college level, like the HBCUs that are under threat, like Black history at all levels. But when you look at 2025, one of the main pieces that we often talk about is the impact on law enforcement, right? We know that Trump always loves to talk about, I'm going to send the troops in to Chicago. I'm going to send the troops in to he tried to have troops shoot the George Floyd protesters in 2020, right? But this isn't just words, right? It's a part of Project 2025 where in there they talk about federalizing local jurisdictions, not even just in terms of the police, which, by the way, we also know that Trump believes in them having absolute immunity, but not only just in terms of the police, like in terms of targeting district attorneys that they feel are not being tough enough on crime, right? That they'll have the ability to remove them. And guess what? Like many things in Project 2025, this isn't just them talking about what they want to do. This is an extension of things that they have already done. They have already removed DAs in certain places, whether it be Florida or they've tried to do it in Georgia with Fani or some other places. So some of the things that they're talking about in 2025 are things that they've already started doing, and it's just a matter of them now taking it and putting it on steroids. These are not just bad words. These are not just mean tweets that Trump is talking about. This is an entire framework embedded in Project 2025 that they are prepared to implement on day one, and it is targeting Black folks, whether through education or through law enforcement or through their economic policies. It is a very real threat, specifically, not just to the entire country, but specifically to our communities.
Absolutely. African Americans and Latinos are going to bear the brunt of it. We see the attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion in it. We know that Donald Trump on the campaign trail has been saying that if he's reelected, he will give 100% immunity to police officers against criminal prosecution for doing their jobs. OK, so people really have to understand the consequences here. In the remaining minutes here, I wanted to ask you, what are some what has been the response when you talk to HBCU students, when you talk about the $17 billion in funding that HBCUs received from the Biden-Harris administration? Okay, that's a record amount of funding. Okay, we know Trump likes to talk about the bill that he signed, the funding, which is Representative Alma Adams' bill, the Futures Act, I think it was called. And when you really break down the funding, it was actually 85 million going to HBCUs. All 250 million wasn't going to HBCUs. Okay, what is the response when you talk about the $17 billion?
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the main issues that when we talk to some of the students, even before they're talking about like the stuff going on in the wider society, in the cities where they come from, or in the cities surrounding the campuses where they're at, a lot of the times the main issues that they're concerned about are their issues on campus, right? It's the cost of tuition, it's the amount of housing that's available on campuses, or the quality of that housing sometimes. Sometimes it's even safety issues, right? And so, when you raise this issue, and sometimes the interesting thing is that they don't see that being connected to politics. They don't see that as being some of them do, right? To be clear, some of them do, but you've got a significant chunk that are like, oh, that policy thing is something else, but that's not connected to like the housing on my campus. And so sometimes the conversation is just around helping to connect those dots. Like, where do you think some of these resources come from, right? Where do you think student aid, how do you think that that's determined, and who it is that you think is able to make these decisions? And so the first step is just connecting those dots. And then you can get into like the differences between, oh yes, the Biden administration made, this amount available as opposed to the Trump administration that, didn't do nearly as much. But the first most basic step is oftentimes just getting them to see the connection between their daily lived experiences on their campuses and federal policy and federal offices and these elections.
Exactly. As I explained to people, politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. And one of the examples I give is the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that was passed in March 2021. It brought us out of COVID. It distributed stimulus checks and $1,400 plus stimulus checks, which were larger than the ones that Trump signed. Okay, people, I still encounter people that think Donald Trump gave them some money, so this is why they want to vote for Donald Trump. But it saved the economy. It opened us back up, brought us out of COVID, things like that. So what are some of the maybe one or two key pieces of legislation besides the $17 billion for HBCUs that when you explain it to people, they say, oh, I had no idea this is where this came from? Like the $1.2 trillion American Rescue Plan. That funded 56,000 construction projects. What are one or two pieces of legislation that you hit people with and knock them out?
I think that the student debt, often raises eyebrows, like people saying, oh, I didn't know, because they're so used to hearing nothing's been done on that, right?
Right.
And then when they hear
$167 billion in student loan forgiveness for about 5 million people. Yes, go ahead.
Right. So that raises some eyebrows and gets people talking about, oh, I didn't know that. The other piece, and this is really, really interesting, and this is a particular case with the young brothers on the campuses, is the economic stuff. Because that is often one of the issues that particularly younger brothers feel like, not so much that, they like Donald Trump, but, when they talk about like what they think somebody might be better on, right? Like even some of the ones that say, oh, I don't like Donald Trump, he's racist, the abortions, like everything, right? They say, oh yeah, but I think he would be better on the money thing, right? And a lot of it is just because of like a lot of disinformation or assumptions, and sometimes gender-based assumptions, to just keep it real, that it creates these perceptions of differences. So when we say things like, oh, well, did you know Biden-Harris achieved the lowest black unemployment rate? Or did you know that inflation that we're complaining about, that it actually didn't start under Biden, that it actually started under Trump because of some of his policies and the way that he handled COVID and the way that he, negotiated the oil deal and all that stuff. And so when we point out some of this, then they'd be like, oh yeah, I guess that does make sense. And then when you add into it talking about like the future policies, like the differences in Kamala Harris's tax policies, which is tax cuts, versus Donald Trump trying to do tariffs, which amounts to national sales tax. When you talk to them about like some of those policies or around the housing policies, when we talk about here, you got one person who discriminated against black folks in housing and another person who's trying to make sure that housing is more affordable for black folks. So when you get into the actual details, then people do say, oh, I didn't know that. The same way that a lot of people who didn't really know Kamala Harris's history as a DA and as pretty much as a progressive DA before we started talking about progressive DAs, right?
Exactly.
When you start explaining some of that, we get a lot of people that are like, oh, snap, I didn't know that. I didn't know about the Back on Track program, So that really, it's a lot of disinformation and just a lot of lack of information. And we've come across a lot of people where, as you said, once we have a conversation, and that's the key part, you got to be having these conversations, right? Once we have the conversations, we get a lot of people like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, yeah, I'm going to vote. Yeah, I think I've made up my mind about a candidate or whatever, whatever it is. But once they get good information, then they're able to make better decisions. We've got to be willing to have those conversations with them. And that's part of what we're hoping this Divine Nine partnership helps us with.
Absolutely. Well, how can people find out more information? How can people find out where you're going to be, things of this nature?
Yeah, Yeah, well, you can check us out. You can always connect with us on our social media, Black Voters MTR on all platforms, Black Voters MTR. You can send us a text. You can text "We Matter," one word, "We Matter," to this number, 25225. That'll get you connected with us. It'll let you get more information. It'll let you get updates about our bus tour. It'll bring you to our website where we have our bus tour stops, all the states that we're going to be going to over the next 30 whatever days. And you can come out and meet us, right? Because we got the blackest bus in America, and we're going to be on your street. So get out
Absolutely.
your house, get out your seat.
All right, Cliff. Well, we have to connect when you come to Detroit, brother. We have to connect, man. Well, look, it's always good to have you on. Great work that you're doing. Tell Latasha we said hi as well, okay?
Definitely. Thank you. Good to see you.
All right, you